Okay, folks. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to my studio. My name is Michael Markowsky, and today we are going to be looking at one of my favorite artists. So obviously, every single time we do this, we are looking at artists who are personal favorites of mine. Today is no different. But today's an artist who might be unknown to a lot of people, but is certainly very well known in India and is revered basically as a saint. He's so beloved. So let's take a look at everything here. What do I want to show? I want to go to this here. Okay, so the artist that we're going to be looking at today is Sobha Singh, and he is a Sikh, or he was a Sikh artist that lived 1901, I think, to 1986, a full long life. And the portrait that we're going to be doing, or the painting of his that we're going to be doing, is a portrait of Guru Gobind Singh, who was the 10th and final human guru. And we'll talk all about the history of this particular individual, as well as Sikhism, and of course the artist Sobha Singh as well as we go. So here is a tracing that I've done of this exact image here, and here is what the tracing looks like. If you want to paint along with me, you can download and print out this document here. If you go to, there's a Dropbox link in the video description below. You can go down to that Dropbox link and click on Sobha Singh down there, and you will see there is some files here. Two of which are identical. They're just a JPEG version of the tracing and a PDF tracing version of the tracing and the original image. So you'll have the tracing version and the original to examine. Now, before we just leap right into the painting, I just want to remind people of a few things here. There is a private Facebook group just for people that are, you know, just like you, watching me. Maybe you're watching me for the first time. I encourage you to join the group, because probably the most exciting thing for me personally is that people upload their versions of the painting that we make in every single class to the Facebook group and are able to get feedback from one another, including myself. And it's just really cool to see the different versions of the same artwork that everyone is making. And what I love about that is we can start really seeing everybody's individual styles starting to come through the more and more and more we do this. So let's just take a look at Sobha Singh here. Yes, I was right. In terms of age, at 84, passed away in 1986. And over the course of his life, he lived a long and very adventurous life, moving around through a few different places, and really saw his country and region changed dramatically. Most notably in 1946, 47, I think, because in 1947 is when India or Kashmir was kind of separated in between India and Pakistan. And so he was living on one side of the border, which is now part of Pakistan, and then moved into India. And when he was in his new location is where he really, I mean, he'd been painting for a few years before that. He was originally a member of the British Indian Army. I think, yeah, served 3 or 4 years in the Army. And when he was also painting while he was in the Army. I think he learned that trade. As one of the things that I've learned is being involved with the military, not as just as a civilian, as part of the Royal Canadian Artist Program, is that there's a lot of downtime. You know, maybe 1/100% of the life of a soldier is actual combat. Most of the other stuff is doing other things, and Often it's picking up different kinds of skills and learning different kinds of trades which have nothing to do with military combat, etc. And so he took some painting classes and learned a very Western way of painting, which is kind of interesting because he's kind of like Amrita Shergill, who was another Sikh artist that we painted a few weeks ago, was someone who really blended traditional Indian art with more modern styles of painting, or Western styles of painting. And that's one of the reasons why he's super significant. And when he settled back in what is now India, or after kind of in the late 1940s, and that's when his real he hit his kind of high peak of production, where he was now making a lot of paintings relatively quickly. And one of the things that he focused on was painting the portraits of the 10 human gurus. And we'll talk about who the gurus were as we get into the painting here. But he did such a good job of making these paintings. One of the gurus, of which we're going to paint today, the last guru, he did such a good job with those paintings that those images are seen as the authentic visages of those gurus, which is kind of mind-boggling. Those gurus lived. Sikhism sort of begins midway through the life of Leonardo da Vinci, so we're talking late 1400s, early 1500s, when the very first guru, Nanak Dev Ji, lived, and went on until this artist, or this guru that we're going to talk about here, died in 1707, 1708. So, you know, the paintings that Sobha Singh made were made 300 years after the last guru passed away, and yet his images are the authoritative ones, the ones that are reproduced everywhere, that are in government buildings, in people's homes and restaurants. And you may or may not even have realized it, but you have seen his images reproduced all over the place, whether you're Indian or not. If you're a Westerner like myself, you've probably seen some of these images. If you've gone to an Indian restaurant, you might have seen some of these images on the walls and windows, etc. And they may or may not have been the actual original images that were produced by Sobha Singh. Let me see. Let's just take a look at some of his artwork. So this is probably the most famous image that Sobha Singh made. This is the first guru, Nanak Dev Ji, and which is, you know, and again, this is probably one of the most famous images in all of Indian art history. I would say probably the most famous. This would be your Mona Lisa in the Western world, right? Like a super iconic, famous image. And then the image we're going to paint today would be probably the second most famous image. And of course, this is the artist himself. There's many different images of him. There's some more photos here on the bottom right. You know, he lived until, you know, 30 years ago is when he passed away. So we're not talking about ancient history here. There are videos where you can watch him talking. I would say putting together this this particular episode, it was a little bit tricky because most of the information is not in English. Is usually in Punjabi, which I don't speak. So I had to do a little bit of legwork to find out as much info as possible. So I apologize that I'm doing my very, very, very best, and if I make any errors, they are entirely my own and out of my own pure ignorance, so I must apologize here. Everything I'm showing here is included in the links down below. And lastly, before we begin here, I want to show this this link here. One of the unfortunate things that has happened to this artist is the proliferation of forgeries, and this, you know, any artist who's successful is often falls victim to people who are making reproductions of the artist's work and then passing them off as the originals. And you can see here, this has become a major issue for the family of Sobha Singh. And just in case somebody thinks that I'm contributing to the proliferation of fraudulent paintings by this great artist, I want to kind of make quite clear that my intention of painting, of reproducing this painting, comes out purely out of love and deep respect for someone I consider to be a master, one of the greatest artists of all time. And when I say that, I really mean one of the greatest persons of all time. So obviously, you know, if you're going to follow along and paint with me, the idea is to learn something from these great artists, which you can apply to making your own artwork, not creating an artwork which you're going to then sell and try to pass off as the original. That would break my heart if that was the result of our course. Anyway, so let's get right to this here. So, as I mentioned before, we have this tracing that I did of the original image, and I'm going to transfer it onto a canvas. Now, this canvas that I'm using right here is, let me see here, this canvas, if you want to buy the exact one that I'm using, there's in the video description below a link to an Amazon page there. This is a 9x12 canvas, which suits this 8.5 by 11 printout pretty well. What I always do off camera, long before the show airs, is I cover this with gesso, acrylic gesso, and then I let it dry, and that's going to help make this a smoother surface. The smoother your surface is to paint, in my opinion, the easier it is to paint, the more fluidly the paint goes onto the surface, the less you're having to dip your brush back into the paint. And when you have a really rough surface, that's often why people are putting lots of water on their brush, because they're just like, oh, it's too thick, it's not spreading very well, right? And there's a few other ways that we can make the paint spread well, as we'll talk about shortly. But this is a block of 220 grit sandpaper, and so now I'm just going to sand this down really quickly. You see Deborah's comment there. Hi Michael, Rick, my hubby, says I should paint this but exchange his face with his because Rick has a great beard and I should be focusing on him. That is pretty funny. I think that's great. Yeah, for sure. It's however you want to make today's painting. Feel free. Okay. So now that I've got this nice and sanded, and it's so much nicer to paint on a smooth surface. You know, one of the smoothest surfaces you could paint on would be like glass. And I used to do window painting when I was a young art student. I used to have a little window painting business, and I would go paint hamburgers on Dairy Queen windows and stuff around town. And that is it's really fun to paint on such a smooth surface, and which is why I like painting on smooth canvases whenever it's possible. Okay, next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to position this probably towards the bottom down here so that the shoulders kind of come right off to the side, and then I can accentuate a little bit of this feather that comes off the top here. And have a little bit crooked. So let's just straighten that up. I guess also, if in doubt, maybe even before I straighten this up, what I would do, rather, if you're wondering where to put this up, I would generally say to go further down, and then I would take this closer to the right if possible. You want more, you know, if this person is looking in this direction, we want more space in front of them in behind, because in behind there's kind of like dead space there, so you always want to leave a little bit more room on this side. If they're looking directly at you, then you can take a lot of creative liberties. And of course, you don't have to take my word for it. Every rule that is out there is made to be broken, so... okay. So what I just did is I put carbon paper in between these two layers here. There's a link to carbon paper in the video description below. There's also carbon paper and graphite paper are not exactly the same thing, but are pretty darn close. Just slightly different materials that do the same thing. There's also a link to white graphite paper, should you want to paint on a black canvas or a blue canvas. If you're really struggling to find those and you don't want to use the Amazon links, go to and you can't find them at your art supply store, go to a fabric store. They often have carbon or graphite paper of all sorts of different colors as well, because people use them for tracing patterns onto fabric. Anyway, let's get started here. These rings that I'm putting in are not technically in the painting. They are there as sort of like ghosted images, but because there is a sort of very subtle halo that we see in the image, and I thought it might be helpful for everyone to have nice round circles coming off here to help make those rings. And of course there's lots of details in this image, and I'm not suggesting that you paint all of those details. In fact, these, what appear to be just rings down here, are pearl necklaces. So, you know, maybe when we paint these, we'll use kind of like circular dots to describe these areas, or you can keep them like this. Obviously, there is significance to every single little detail in this painting, and I don't know the significance of the pearls, but if you want to be true to the actual original, then you'd probably want to paint those details as authentically as possible. You'll see in the original that, you know, on the collar here, it's quite highly detailed. We'll see how much detail we're able to get in our painting, but I suspect we won't have nearly as much. So you'll see, especially when I get into this medallion on the front here, I'm gonna remove a bunch of details, at least in my tracing. We'll see how much time there is as we get started in the painting process for actually painting this here. You see, right, I'm just sort of simplify a lot of this. Now, when we actually do this painting, you know, I'm going to refer back to the original to see if I can get some of these details in. Okay, let's just take a quick little look. Right, everything's there except the face. I'm also gonna put his name here. I also did this with the Robert Bateman painting we made just, was it last week? And I forgot to actually put his signature in there. But, you know, so it's up to you as to whether you want to include those details in there. I don't know if that makes it more closer to a forgery or not. My thinking was that it was to really help clarify that the original this is not a painting by me, but by this great master of art. But I could see how people might see it as something else entirely. Okay. Now remember, we're going to paint over everything in this picture. So don't be too precious about all of the pencil lines that you put on here. Let's take another look. You know, so as I do this, I just want to see, is there anything like major glaring things missing, like this ear and that hair back there? Anything else? I think that's pretty good. All right. Well, we're going to fill in all of this. You could do that right now if you wanted. You know, we could peel this off. And then you could give this to a kid who could color it in for you. And maybe they're coloring simultaneously to you while you're painting. So as I said, you could take, once you've got this traced out, you could take a pencil and kind of continue, oops, this line goes there. Somewhere in here, see, that was a line I forgot to trace. Cool. You do see that this is a little bit smudgy, right? So that's why we're going to paint a layer of paint over top of this right now. Okay, so I'm going to move this painting off to the side. Let's grab our paints. All of our paints can fit inside of a shoebox. Alright, so inside here I've got all my paintbrushes. If you want to get the exact same paintbrushes that I'm using, in the video description below you can see links to all of that. Again are getting low. So we're going to start out with a warm yellow as a background. So we're going to put down this color underneath all the other colors as we get started here. So you see I put some warm yellow. Again, if you want to get the same yellow that I've got, just look in the video description. I'm going to get some water on this brush, and this is really the only time you'll ever see me using water to paint with acrylics. Okay, so this is just going to thin it out a little bit, make it sure it really spreads evenly across the surface and is also a bit transparent. This warm yellow is pretty transparent anyway, but adding a bit of water on there just amps that up. So let's go back in here. Okay. And then I'm just going to quickly cover this surface. Now I really want to try to avoid doing too much scrubbing with my brush. Because if I scrub, now especially I've got water on here, right? We use water to clean our brushes. So if we are scrubbing with a brush that's got water on it, we're going to scrub all of those pencil lines that we just spent the past 10 minutes tracing onto the canvas. I'm also just going to get the sides here. Basically want to just completely hide any white of the canvas. Okay. So I'm going to blow dry this really quickly so that we can jump right... Actually, you know what? Before I even do that, I'm just going to wipe this down. It makes my life so much easier. And I don't have to scrub this off at the end of today's episode. Okay. Okay, and I'm just gonna move that out of the way. It's nice and dry. The more dry this is, the better, because we don't, if we start painting on this while it's wet, we'll actually scrub some of that paint off, and I don't want to do that. So I'm gonna just take the paint that was on here, and I can put it into my water to clean. And it's probably unlikely that I'll use a big brush like this again for the rest of today's session. So I can put that aside, which is a good reason why I would like to kind of get it as clean as possible so that I don't ruin that brush. You can see I like to clean my brushes off on my shirt. Okay, so let's put some paint on here because we're going to start painting this painting right away. So we've got our warm yellow and our cool yellow. This is our warm red. And our cool red. We won't need much, like basically this is, I always tell people put as much paint on your palette as toothpaste on your toothbrush. So you'll see that, I mean, we will probably, the most we're going to use is probably some of the warm yellow, which I'll put some more back in here, and white. Those will be the two colors I use the most of during today's session. And here's my white. Okay, so let's get some brushes out here. That's probably about like the largest brush that I will use today. Right, it's about the size of my pinky finger nail. And then I'm going to want to have a bunch of very small brushes for some of these little tiny details in the face. I've got all my small brushes out. Good. Let's move all those out of the way. Tape away, and then have a sip of tea, which is the most important part of any of my process, especially when I'm doing this live. Like, it's a good opportunity for me to take a break to think about what I'm about to say next. Okay, so we've got this yellow. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't think that he painted yellow onto his paintings as an underpainting. It looks like he probably painted directly onto a white canvas and then painted, so these would not have yellow underneath. But if you've been painting along with me for the past, since September, I've been making a couple paintings every single day over the past 7 months. I do put a colored ground, which is what this is, a color down first, and then paint other colors over top of them to get that kind of a glowing kind of a look, and also to hide the white in the weave of the canvas. But you're certainly welcome to approach it however you would like. I'm kind of in one of those things where it's like I like how much of each artist's technique do I want to use without losing the people that have been painting with me all the time and who I've been teaching certain kinds of strategies to. So, yeah. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to paint the background next. And I'm going to paint this peachy color on the background. So let's mix up this peachy pinkish color. There's a few ways we can do that. One of which is to take our red, and then let's take some of this yellow, and we're going to need a bunch of it, so let's just scoop a bunch out here. And so we're taking this kind of orangey color, and we're just going to take some white and mix it in here. So it's like we've got an orange. The more red you put into it, a little bit more of a peachy quality you'll have. Alright, so we take a bit more red. The yellow is, the reason why we're putting yellow in there is if we didn't have any yellow at all, then we would have a pink, versus we kind of want a bit of a peachy quality. So let's put a bit more white in here. Okay, that's great. So now I'm going to take this color and I'm going to paint it onto the background. I'm going to try to obey some of these rings that we've painted here as well. paint in these kind of arc-like shapes. And I'm going to go right up and even a bit on top of the face here. And there we go. Okay. I'm just going to expand this outwards. And while that's there, I'm also going to come back and do this side here. You can see that I'm not really modifying this color much at all. I'm not, and here's the feathers, so I'm just going up into the feathers here a bit. I am not, you know, putting in this, where I've done the tracing, these lines in here. You see how I'm just kind of painting right over top of them? That's because I can modify all of that later on. So I don't, this is just sort of my first pass at the background. So I'm not going to worry about spending too much time and energy on this particular aspect here. Okay, and then I'm going to go over here. Now there's a bit of blue in the corners. I'm going to do all of that in a little bit. Maybe, well, maybe I'll do, I'll wait for this to dry before I do that. That's sort of like a little vignette effect that Sobha Singh is using here, which is, I think, was a smart idea. It helps kind of act as a bit of a frame and make sure that the attention of the viewer kind of stays inside of the picture. So ideally I want to do as good of a job as I can at like hiding the yellow of the canvas, or covering it, not hiding it, because it's not like I painted it there for a reason. I just want it to, and what that yellow is also kind of vibrating through here, creating some energy. So I like that, and I don't want to totally obliterate it. Cool. And you can see I can still see some of these pencil lines coming through, which I like. If you were to paint it and you put a little bit too much white in there, then those lines might disappear a little bit, which is, you know, not a problem. It just means it might be a little bit trickier for you to find if you want to get kind of this perfect halo kind of effect. You could break out your graphite paper and try tracing it over again. You probably won't line it up very well. It's almost impossible to get it back to where it was, but that would be a little trick to kind of do that. Okay. So one thing on our Thursday class is our Paint the News class, and this Thursday I want to do an Earth Day themed episode. I don't know if Earth Day is this Thursday. I can't remember the calendar, but I'd be curious to know what you would like to paint as an Earth Day themed painting on Thursday. So in the chat, in the comments, let me know. May, one of our students, maybe you're watching right now, May, suggested we paint polar bears because they're an endangered species. We painted a Robert Bateman eagle just last week, and she felt that kind of worked well with the theme. Are you interested in polar bears? She also thought that might be good because I actually have been to the North Pole, and I do have a polar bear story that I can share. But I also saw some other animals up there, including Arctic foxes and Arctic hares, or Arctic rabbits, and some very tiny plants. Even in the middle of bitter, bitter cold, there was some plants growing up there. So what do you think we should paint on Thursday? Okay, so let's get back to the task at hand. Now, if you've painted this and you're feeling like, oh, the color's not right, it's too pink or too yellow or too white or not enough white, don't worry about it, right? Mine is not exactly like this either. But the point is this is just the first layer of paint. We get this layer of paint down. We're going to put another layer of paint on it later on once it's dry. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to start working on the, let's start with the face. Because what I found over teaching these courses is it's very helpful for people if we paint in some of the facial features now. And then that way, when we start putting in some of the color on the face, people still see those lines coming through and they don't get lost on the facial features. So I'm going to take my own, this is what I've learned. Even as a teacher, I can learn things, right? So I'm going to paint some of those facial features. Now you could use black. Black would be the fastest way to do this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix the darkest color that I can get on this palette. Now, I've done a whole 45 episode long how to paint course, which is free and available to anyone in the world for free. It's on my YouTube page, and I think there's a link in the video description. If not, just go click on where it says Markowsky Art down there. It'll take you to my YouTube page and all the different playlists that are there. So to make the darkest color I can make, I'm going to take some warm blue. I'm going to take some cool blue. I'm going to take some cool red and see if I mix these together. What I'm going to get is a really, really dark purple, which is actually kind of cool. In fact, well, you could paint a really, really dark purple underneath this. That would be a kind of a nice color because it will work really well with the yellow. But just for our sake, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of cool yellow. You could use any yellow in there. Adding the yellow is just going to pull it from the purple towards the neutral core where it's going to be the darkest color possible. So let me just show you a little bit how I just mixed the color we just got. So what we started with, and again, this is the very first episode of my How to Paint class. We made one of these charts, right? So what we just did is we took this blue, the warm blue, and we just mixed it with the cool blue. And then we took these two colors and we mixed it with the cool red, right? So we took these colors, and so we had a pretty deep purple. It was probably not, like, if we just took the warm blue and the cool red, we would have got this purple. We had a little bit of this, so it kind of pulled it a little bit towards neutral core. And then we took the opposite color, the complementary color, the cool yellow, and by mixing even just a little bit of that, it pulled this color towards the yellow, and as it goes towards the yellow, it goes through the neutral core. The neutral core is where we can get our darkest colors, where the color is the least saturated as possible. And if you think about if you've ever done any editing of photos on your phone and you play with the saturation, you go in one direction and all the colors get really bright and poppy, candy color. You go all the way to the other side and you get rid of all the saturation, it goes to black and white, right? So when we talk about how saturated a color is, it's basically how colorful is the color, how intense is that color. So I'm going to use this nice dark color here, and I'm also, you know what, I'm going to put a little bit of slow dry medium in here. another name for this, and different brands have different names for all this, and rather than slow dry, it could be also known as a paint retarder, because it retards the slowing process. So I'm taking this slow dry medium to slow down the paint. That keeps the paint wet for longer, which means if it's wet longer, then I can paint with the paint just a little bit longer before it dries. So, am I going to use that? I don't think so, but let me put it to the side. Okay, so I'm just going to take this paint on my brush. Let's zoom right in. Okay. So I'm just going to kind of quickly go over some of these lines, including like the eyebrows. Now, as you get better with painting, you will find this to be an unnecessary step, because you'll have more confidence and you won't be so worried if the face kind of disappears a little bit underneath the paint. But since we're all kind of just beginning, doing a little bit of this will, I think it just makes your life just a little bit easier. And who doesn't want a little bit easier of a painting experience, right? We want to have fun, at least when you're beginning as an artist, right? I'm not going to spend too much time trying to make this beard look good, because we're going to paint it all later on. And if you don't do a great job of this particular step, don't worry, because you can paint it completely out. No one will ever know it was ever there. You may notice that my paint is a little bit transparent, and that's because I put that slow dry medium in there. And the slow dry medium, if you put a bunch of it in, as I've done, it will also make the paint a little bit more transparent. See how I just painted over this this jewel that's hanging over his forehead? I'm going to paint white there anyway, so I don't care if I paint that line through, if it helps me get the shape of his headdress there. Let's just do a bit of, these lines are dark anyway. Okay. So do I want to do any more here? I'm just thinking out loud to myself. It's dark there. I think that's good for right now. If we just back out. Okay. So I'm just going to wash the paint off of this brush. So hopefully that helps people. Paula says, well, polar bear, Arctic fox are good too with their babies. Thanks, Michael. Deborah says, I think we should paint a polar bear with her cub. Ah, interesting. I did not see any cubs. Polar bear cubs or Arctic fox. What is a fox's, what's a baby fox called? There's your trivia question. Because a cub is a bear, I think, that's, if I understand, right? That's a bear cub. Interesting. Stuff I haven't thought about before. If we paint an Arctic fox, I can actually show you some pictures and video of an Arctic fox that I saw up there. Polar bear, I would have to use just a generic image, although I took some pictures of footprints of a polar bear, which was a kind of a scary experience. But anyway, let's focus on the matter of hand, Michael. So the next thing, now that we've got that traced out, I think that might help a lot of people. I think we'll wait for some of this to dry, and while that's drying, let's put some blue down here, and maybe potentially put some of that blue up into other parts of the painting. Let me think about it. So that blue, it looks to me that blue is a little bit more of a, like, it's a little bit maybe in between here, but verging a bit more on the cool side with a bit of white. So let's take I'm going to take this size of brush here. Alright, so a little bit of a, you know, again, if we think of like the size of your hand, right, it's kind of one of my smallest square brushes. I'm going to put it down here. And then I'm going to steal some white and just mix it off to the side. And then let's look at the color we've got here. So that's a little bit too white. So if that's too white, then I'm just going to mix it into this blue. Slowly darken it. I think that's pretty good. Okay. Now, what's interesting about this painting is see how it kind of, everything kind of fades out as it goes down here. To get that kind of effect, we want to do probably a glaze when we're talking with acrylic paint. A glaze, or you could mix the slow dry medium, but the glaze I think will get it the best effect. What I'm going to help jumpstart this process, I'm just going to take the paint as it is, and I'm going to paint it in. To the parts where I want it to be kind of most fully saturated. So the collar. You know what, I'm going to paint right through. These are going to be pearls here, and since they're going to be circular, I want some of that color to come through. Remember, these are all going to be little circles, so if I go over these lines, it won't be such a bad thing. In fact, I'm probably going to glaze over them in a little bit here. See how I'm kind of just painting a little bit now. Once I've got kind of the shape. And then I'm also going to come up here and just, I know this is a bit darker than the original. Okay, so once I've got it like that, I'm just going to take my brush and I'm just going to kind of scrub some of the existing paint that's still on there. Okay, and with any remaining paint, I'm just going to scrub it off here. So there's still some on here. And then just kind of take my brush right over top of there. Okay. Now to kind of get a bit better, cleaner effect here, I'm going to put some glazing fluid in here. So this is some glazing fluid, right? And it's satin, or otherwise known as a matte glaze. I'm going to get a bit on my brush, and I'm just going to take, actually I should have just put it right over here, like this. Right, so now it's much more transparent. It probably could have been even more transparent. Now I'm just going to go over top of these. And I've got a big fuzzy brush like this, which is known as like a mop brush. And I'm just going to use it like a mop to do a bit of scrubbing. So I paint a bit with my glaze. And you can see, you know, I've done a better job of it on this side. Okay, so I'm going to use the blow dryer. I'm going to blow dry this, and then I'm going to come back and do it one more time. Ah, see, that's when I get impatient, that's what happens. Okay, so that's all dry. Let's just kind of, you see what I'm doing? It's taking a bit more of the slow dry medium, or sorry, my glazing fluid, and just kind of putting it back in some of these places, including this place I just accidentally scrubbed out. gonna kind of blend the bottom down here down a bit. Oh, and my paintbrush, I noticed that, but I forgot about it. Had a little bit of blue on it, the mop brush, when I set it down. So let's just clean that away. That means that mop brush needs to take a little bit of a time out. And then here's just showing you can do this with, this is just a cheap brush from Home Depot. Right, now I gotta blow dry all of this, and we'll do it again. So, a baby fox is known as a kitten? That is crazy. Baby fox doo 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 doo. Baby fox doo 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 doo. Baby fox. Daddy fox doo 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 doo. Baby. Anybody watch too much cartoons with your children? So this is, you know, not the best glazing job I've ever done, but come back up here. The more you do this, the cleaner and the better overall look you'll get. But we can also glaze other colors on top of this as well. So maybe while that's drying, I'm going to take a bit more glazing fluid. Let's put it up here. And let's do the same thing. I'll get a bit of this color. Get this glaze on my brush. Okay. And then how about let's put a little bit of this blue elsewhere. Like right up in the corner here. Now we can take that and then just use our brush to kind of blend it in a little bit. And you can see how subtle of an effect that is, right? Barely any kind of a change. Now I'm going to use a few different methods to do this, but I'll just wanted to kind of show you this first one. And then right, so I've got that paint on this brush and then kind of just drying it off a bit. Just getting those outer edges. Alright, so let's do a bit of this down here. If you wanted, like there might be a bit, we could add a little bit of detail. Very subtle. Almost like a bit of a shadow was back there. You can take this same sort of thing and to help kind of get these rings in here. So I mean, it's however much of this you actually want to do, and it doesn't have to be blue either. We're going to use a few different colors. We're going to use some white when we do this a little bit later on as well. So you have to be a little bit careful. Like, ideally, once you put a little bit of that glaze down, you let it dry, and then you don't do anything until it's dry. Otherwise, you're going to scrub off, and you get these little kind of patchy areas where now you've got like a little bit of white kind of coming through, which is part of the process. Actually, let's go all the way down here with this blue. To kind of get as clean of a kind of a line from the darker areas, you just have to put glazes on until you build up enough in these different places. You just glaze a little bit darker over where all these pearls will go. And also glaze this is, they're going to have, yeah, purple right over top of here, but anything I can do to kind of help that process would be appreciated. Okay. There's also a dark blue right up in here. So I'm just going to take this is my warm blue. I'm going to put just a tiny bit of white in there. It may darken it, but that white will kind of give a good foundation. I'm just going to paint right over that pearl that's there. I just need a smaller brush release for this bit of a detail here. It doesn't go quite that far, but that's okay. So we had cool blue here and some warm blue up here. Okay. So we're doing pretty good here in terms of like where we want to be and also time and all that kind of stuff. So the most important part of the painting is the foundation. Once we've got a good foundation in place, a lot of the rest of it is fairly straightforward. So just want to dry off, clean and dry off these brushes as well as possible. When I'm painting, I usually make a little stack of where all the brushes that I've been painting with go, and as I'm painting, I clean my brushes up. But at the very end of the night, I clean these brushes again a little bit more thoroughly, so that paint doesn't have a chance to harden inside. Because, you know, when I'm painting, I'm not doing my best job possible of cleaning. Oops. A little bit of water on there, not good. If you get water on your painting like that, it will start to kind of dissolve the paint away and then leave a little bit of a clean spot on the picture there. Joshua just joined us. Hello, Josh. I hope you're having a good day too. And Deborah, how kind of you to say the day just got better when I joined in with everyone. How are you? That's good. Okay, so let's the next thing we want to do here is let's I think maybe what we'll do is we'll paint some of this yellow, because we're going to then modify that color and turn it into a skin tone here. I've got paint on my table that got into some of my brushes. Let's clean that. Okay, so to get this color, it's pretty close to what we already have here, which is our warm yellow. But let's say we want to make it just a little bit more orangey and gold-like. So I think we're going to just make it add a little bit more red to it. In fact, so this is my warm yellow and my warm red. Let's just see if we mix some of these guys together. It's kind of dry. Oops, a little bit too much red. So if that happens, what I want to do is sort of wipe some of that paint off and then try doing it again a little bit over here. You can see we're pretty darn close to that color right there. Just my warm red. To make it darker, we might add a little bit of blue in there, but I think we're going to just put down the local color first. So I'm just going to put this. In fact, I'm going to paint, so that I'm not trying to paint around all of this stuff. I'm just going to paint right over top of this, and then later on we'll paint some white over top of these areas here. Okay, and you know what? I'm going to paint this down here. The collar. Let's see what that looks like. Paint this right here. I think actually I'm going to paint it over here. Now I see all of this blue that I painted. In fact, I'm going to paint this right over. So what I'm doing is I'm just looking for the places that have, like, I'm building everything up in big chunks of spaces. You know, the big areas of color. I'm moving from the the high view slowly down to a more detailed view. And so you imagine like cutting all this out of colored paper or something, right? It's kind of like what I'm up to here. So the next step is we're going to mix a flesh tone here. So we're going to mix a brown, and then the more white we add to it, the lighter it's going to be. So we actually have the beginnings of it right here, but let's do it again anyway. So we've got our warm yellow and our warm red. Let's mix it right here. So we'll just add a little bit of warm red in there. Now what I'm going to do, so warm yellow, warm red. Let's take a little bit of warm blue. See, not too much. Let's put it off to the side there. And let's mix this in here. See how that color just starts going more and more brown, the more blue gets in there? Okay, and then now we're going to put a little bit of white into this color. So that's pretty good, but it's now getting a bit too yellowy brown. So let's put a bit more red in here. That's pretty good. I'm going to add a little bit more of this blue. So I'm just going to pull that blue in here. Now I think this is pretty good to start. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start putting this in so let's say in fact I'm going to go to a slightly smaller brush here. A small brush is good. I'm going to start by putting this into the darker areas. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take this color and I'm going to put it in the mustache and in the beard, because we don't want yellow showing through the beard. We want some kind of darker flesh tone underneath all of this, right? Or at least, well, you know, I'm going to paint it all here. I probably should have painted some pink underneath the beard here so that I don't have to worry about, you know, because the beard is not going to be totally opaque. There's going to be a little bit of that color showing through, right? And again, don't worry if this color isn't exact. Look at his hair here. This is why I painted those dark black lines first, right? Go on to the nose here. Try to See how it's going to make it dark there. Around the bottom of the nostril. Okay. You know, even while I'm here, and this is a bit of a darker color, I can use this actually to do a little bit of darkening. Actually, you know what? I want to be careful with, well, because there's a bit of white in this. But, you know, while I guess we're in a bit of a hurry, aren't we? I'm just going to use this to add a little bit of the shadow on the headdress here. Okay, that's pretty good for where we want to be right now. So what I want to do is let's continue. I want to mix this color again. Let's add just a little bit more red to it. We're going to get a bit more of the warmth in the face. All right, so it's the same color. We're just adding a bit more of the warm red and some white into it. And then let's paint. In fact, maybe even just a tad bit more white. And let's take this color. So it's not showing up super well on camera, but so I'm just adding a little bit more white into that so you can see it a little bit more. This is to get kind of that rosy cheek kind of quality. We will get more and more rosy. We'll put more highlights on here. It's just going to be a bit of a slow build until we get to that part. Okay, and I'm even going to take this exact same color we just used. I'm going to put it on the lips here as well. Earlobe. Okay. So, depending on how you feel, right now we're either doing really well or really poorly. But you have to remember we're, let's say, about 40% of the way through the painting. So you know, one of the things I see people all the time is they get really worried at this stage. Halfway through the painting is the most dangerous part of the painting. That's when you feel most compelled to want to give up, because you have an idea of what you want it to look like, And even though you're not done, you feel like it should be closer to the original. Just have to keep in mind, you know, it's sort of like if you were to, you know, when you're cooking, you would never, you know, you're making a steak and you take it right out of the wrapper and you put it in the frying pan for 20 seconds, cut a chunk out and go like, oh, this steak tastes disgusting. Must be something wrong with it. You would know, like, well, it's not done yet. It's still kicking, basically. I need to cook it a little bit longer, and then when it's done, or at least much closer to being done, it will probably taste much better than it does right now. Joshua says, I'm doing wonderful. I just finished an interpretation of Monet's Water Lilies, but was not proud of it the way it came out, so I'm doing another one. Deborah says, amazing. I liked your other Monet. Yeah. You've been doing a lot of painting there, Josh. It's really cool. Thank you for being so active in the group. It's really cool to see people really taking the Facebook group over. What was I going to use this one? And I'm pretty busy, so I don't have too much of an opportunity to interact there. So I love that you guys are just sort of taking it over and making it your own thing. Okay, so let's what should we do next here? You know, maybe I'm just going to give it a little blow dry over top of everything. That'd probably be smart. Okay, I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a bit of white onto this canvas, like right up here in a few places, just to kind of get that process started. So just take a bit of white, right directly on my brush without anything else on there, and I'm going to start right up at the top so that it's least likely that I'll brush my hand over and into it. I'll get my big head out of the way. I'm just gonna paint that white. And this is this big feather. Have to be kind of a little bit careful here because I want to just going to paint a bit into here, and then we'll paint a little bit more like feathers later on. That'll be close to the very end where we'll come up and kind of finish this part of the painting up. Okay. Let's go to a smaller brush. And depending on how much paint you put down here, the easier or more difficult it will be to see your pencil lines underneath. I think it's, in some ways it's easier to put down a thicker layer because then it's really going to cover very nicely. Okay, this line goes through here. I kept making that bigger, so this means so yeah, it's in some ways it's easier or faster. It can be faster, I should say, to paint thick white because then it covers things really quickly, and then you don't have to worry about painting several layers of white. But it obviously, because it hides things, that can make things difficult precisely because you might lose some of the detail and have struggled to find some of the details again. Okay. Go into these eyes. Now, generally painting eyes really white like this is not super desirable because it can look a little bit strange. Most people, you know, if you ever just look around at anybody, if you're sitting across from somebody at dinner tonight, look at their eyes and you'll see that very infrequently are their eyes like really pure white, unless they got the light shining right on their eyes. Most of the time, it's a little bit darker because of shadows and such, right? Now there is a bit of highlights on the cheeks and lips and nose particularly. I'm going to wait until a little bit further down, and I'll probably do that as a glaze. Again, I'm going to do all these little pearls. It's going to take me a bit of time, but anyway. So there's that. Okay, let's just clean these off. Deborah says, everyone, it's past 8:30 here in the evening. I have to go. I'll continue this tomorrow, Michael, when I finish my Guru Rick painting. Hugs, everyone. I'll be interested to see Guru Rick. That's pretty funny. Okay. Let's see. I'm just going to blow dry that. I was going I can do this anytime, but let's just, while it's on my top of mind, this jewel right here, I'm going to paint white so that when I paint pink over top of it later, it will really kind of pop. Right, like by putting white in places, it means the color that's there is going to be full intensity. It's not going to be diluted or mixing with any of the other colors like we have here, right? Currently, all of the colors we see are being mixed with the first warm yellow that we put down, of which really all that it remains might be in the eyes here. That might be a little bit there. Everything else has been now covered with paint. And actually, I'm just going to touch this. Okay, let's look at this. So before I start painting the facial hair, I just want to try to get most of the face as close as possible to the colors that we want in there. So I think what I want to do now is put just a bit of, what should we do? Let's go to the, we've got a bit of a darker here, so let's go a little bit the opposite way, go a bit brighter. So we're going to do a bit of glazing with some of this cool red. All right, so I'm going to take some of this cool red, which on its own is pretty intense, right? So we're going to dilute it quite a lot. We're going to take some of the glazing fluid. I'm going to rub as much of that paint off as possible. Even kind of rub it off of my hand there. We're going to glaze with this. Now, depending on how much glaze to paint you use, the more subtle or intense of an effect you'll get, right? I barely put any of that. In fact, I'm just going to make it a little bit darker because it's going to show up a bit better on camera. All right, and let's zoom in. All right, so you see this kind of cool on the cheeks here. A bit in the nose, and the shadow. See how it mixes differently with the different paints, which is always interesting. And as I'm painting this, I'm trying to kind of curve around the shape of the face. All right, we got some of it up here, that cooler color. Kind of basically all in the shadows. And I know we're going to brighten it up here in just a couple seconds. Just bear with me. Right over all of the lips. And a bit here. Ears as well. so I'm just going to blow dry this. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take a bit of white now, not too much. A bit of white, blend it in. And here's my glazing fluid. So I kind of like roll it out. I just want to make sure that I've got the right color in here. Okay, so let's now see what this looks like. A little bit more white, but while I'm here, I'm just going to use this. You can kind of do this endlessly. I love glazing because you can just take your time while you're painting. Okay, let's add just a bit more white. And if you ever kind of get a little bit freaked out, you can use your mop brush to kind of just soften things up a bit. So this is getting a little bit too pinkish. We want a bit more yellow in here, but I think I'll glaze a bit of yellow over as we in a little bit here. While I'm right here, I'm just going to take a bit of the cool red right out of the tube. Just to darken this up a bit. I know it might look a little bit funny right now, but you just have to keep in mind that we don't have the benefit of the dark beard and the dark eyes. In fact, maybe let's I think we could probably start that. So this is remember that dark color I used for the outlines way back when we did the face, and I put a little bit of that slow dry medium in here. It's still a bit wet, which is perfect. So let's go in here and actually, you know what? This is very blue. I need to make it a bit more brown. So how do I take this very dark purple and turn it into more of a brown color? Well, I could mix a nude, but since I've got this, let's just move a bit of it to the side. Well, actually, you know what? There's not much left. Let's do it right here. Let's take some warm yellow and warm red. I'm just going to mix this color into here, because basically what we're creating a dark brown. And however much of each I put in there, the darker or lighter it will be. Better. It's also dark in these eyes. We'll put a little highlight in them. His eyes look like they're brown anyway, right? So this is going to work pretty well. Nostrils. Okay, now let's get this facial hair here. So I want to save the darkest part of this beard for where it's thickest, which is going to be probably right around in the chin here, and it's going to get lighter as it goes out towards these edges, and possibly the pink would show through. So as I'm going into the paint, I'm kind of mixing some from this area, and if I want darker, I kind of take a bit of this and mix a bit of the darker color on. Kind of moving a bit back and forth as I go.
again, I'm trying to kind of get a bit of curving strokes here for this kind of almost like little swirly brush strokes here. Now I'm going to glaze a little bit afterwards. So I'm not going to completely finish this beard just yet, right? So personally, I like all of this variation in here where we have some parts are darker than others because that makes it look more quote-unquote real, right? So now I'm just taking a little bit of the darker color and mixed in, just going over some of these areas to darken small parts. Underneath this lip, it's going to get kind of dark, right? Alright, and then up here, it's going to be darker. Ear, here on the back of the head, that would be darker, and then some of this kind of underneath the chin, or the, yeah, like the jaw area, that's going to be darker. You see how I take my time when I'm doing this? I'm not rushing. And I'm not going super dark all the edges. I'm going to fade that. I want that to fade out, right? Including up here. I'm going to glaze some of this in a minute. Before I do that, I'm going to do any outlining that I need to do around the eyes. So let's take the darkest color we have. And in fact, I'm going to blow dry that. I see in the chat there, Heidi says, another portrait, sad face. Oh, I didn't know. you weren't interested in doing portraits. There is quite a lot of landscape and animals and stuff coming up, so including this week. Okay, so let's go around. Actually, no, I just wasn't quite thinking. I'm gonna blow dry that again. So right now I'm just going to get the shape of the top eyelids on both eyes. Okay. And then outline the bottom one. And we get to the nose. Obviously the darkest part of the nose is the part that's furthest in, usually kind of near the top of this ridge here. So get that, both sides. And I think we'll glaze a little bit to darken some of those. Just a little bit of line under here. Okay. I'm going to also go over top. I'm going to just actually outline the circles of the iris here, the outer part. And then in the inside, I'm going to put the dark area for the pupil. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, which should we do? Let's do, I'm going to take a bit of, we'll do this as a bit of a glaze. Put a bit of glazing fluid there, right? And now we're just going to very lightly dilute this dark color with the glazing fluid. So I want to do some lines. I want to do some dark lines, but I don't want them to be quite as dark
as the lines I just painted, right? Let me get the shape of, that's too subtle, which I could do if I was Leonardo da Vinci. I could do that, but I'd spend a few years making this painting. In a bit more of a hurry. That result, so let's just erase it. And I'm going to blow dry that just to, because I did so many experiments there. Oh, there's paint that got on my sleeve or something. That should be a bit more brown, shouldn't it? Less purple. The purple kind of makes it look a bit like a eyeshadow or something. So let's glaze in a few places here to darken parts of the face. Top of that nostril. Here and then underneath. Stuck to my hand there. Okay, I'm just going to glaze a bit of shadows onto this side of the face. Right, I can always use this mop brush just to integrate things. Okay, let's glaze in here to just darken this part of the cheek. Come in here and just glaze around the lips, just darken this area here. We can also do the same thing under here.
Okay, let's do a little bit of glazing up here while we got this darker brown. There's obviously a ton of details up here. Now, how much details you want to paint in your picture is totally up to you. I'm going to probably keep it to a bit of as much of a minimum as I can, because I'd like to get this painting done within about the next 45 minutes or so. Darkening in, like, see all these places where it's kind of underneath some jewels and things. Just gonna darken that. Okay, see, it's kind of getting a little bit, you know, when I overwork an area, that's why it's best just to kind of keep on moving. Just keep on moving. I'm going to glaze a little bit. Remember I was saying I want to kind of make this look a little bit fuzzy in between, so we don't know necessarily where all these hairs begin and end. That's what I'm doing right now. Kind of like softening up some of these edges here. Okay. Putting a bit of shade underneath the eye. You got to be really careful when you do this on someone's face, because you can make them look old and tired really quickly. So you just want to be a little bit careful about how much you put underneath someone's eyes. Okay. I'm going to put a bit of warm red on the lips. Again, I'm going to glaze this. Actually, I got some glazing fluid already here. Just to make it a little bit more transparent. Too much, it's easy to go too dark too quickly, so that the glaze, as soon as you put a little bit of glaze in, it goes a bit transparent anyway, so. See if I can go right over top of the white. I can look around, see again, is there any place that needs to be a bit warmer? Okay. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take a bit of the darker color that I've had. Not much. If you see, I just take a bit of this. Just mix it into my glaze a bit. Just to get... I think actually I need to wait for that red to dry. Okay. Oh, you know what? While I'm right here, I can use this red. Right now it's really going to pop because there's that white underneath. There is a bit of like ribbon around here, so I'm just gonna quickly do a bit of that there. Okay, so let's see. Pretty close on the face. I think I'll eventually darken this a little bit more, including around the lips and everything. But I want to do it in stages here. Like, I'm pretty happy with the face thus far. I mean, there's some really great little reflected light on the inside of the nose here, on the bridge of the nose. All those details, I don't know if I'll have enough time to capture all those in today's painting, but we'll do our best. Maybe let's just sort of move away from the face for a little bit and move down here to this part of his outfit. And let's see. What I'm going to do, I'm just looking at it. I want to paint some purple here. So to make a purple, I'm going to take my warm blue and my warm red. We'll mix that together. We get a purple. And I'm going to move up here. We'll just mix this with some white up here. And I'm going to put a bit of glazing fluid in there just to make it a little more transparent. Let's go to a slightly smaller brush. I think I hear my wife doing some deep cleaning, scrubbing upstairs. I hope some little one didn't knock something onto the floor and make a big mess. Okay, so I'm going to take this same color. So the benefit of putting a little bit of this glaze in is it kind of mixes a bit with the paint that's already there. Just take another brush and just kind of brush a bit of it away if it's built up a little too much. I can always just let it dry and then see what it looks like, and then we can add more where it's needed. So I might add a little bit of white back over there. Well, let me think about it. Just let that dry and then we'll come back. Any purple elsewhere? Let me see. I could put a bit of purple into some of these corners. Let's see if we do that and then kind of blend it out a bit. I don't think it's kind of cool. It's not blue, but we can, let's back that out even more there. You know, it's supposed to be blue, but I kind of, we can have blue and purple here. Getting some more glazing fluid on here. Purple on his clothes here too. Just blend it out a bit. Okay, so getting closer. Let's blow dry this. Okay. What should I do next? I think what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take some of the white and warm yellow. I come in here. Just cleaning this area up, which got a little bit messy, didn't it? And I'm going to do the same on this side, just so it clean in both up. Could leave this like that. I don't mind it like that. Probably will, however, just paint warm yellow over top. Okay. Now we got all this beautiful detailing in the collar. I think to do that, I'm going to take warm yellow and white again. Let's put a bunch more white in here. And I did put this in the sketch originally, so you could draw it out before you paint it. I'm even just wondering if I should just leave this, just thinking about the time I have left. You know what, maybe I'm going to just leave it for right now. And focus instead up here. Do the same thing over here. So what I'm just thinking to myself right now, this area, how to do this. I might darken, put gray underneath some of this here. And I'm not super happy with the top of that forehead, although I'm just thinking of time-wise, how much, I don't know if I'm going to have much more time to do stuff on his face. So let's put in an eye reflection. I'm going to glaze that with some red in a minute. going to take this purple and I'm going to put a very light purple. Maybe I'll make it even darker so it sticks out a bit more. I'm going to take this purple and put it under here so the pearls that I'm about to paint show up a little bit. I could paint gray here, but just want as much color in my paintings as possible. I want to do just a little bit of a darker brown before I completely close the chapter on the face. So, making a brown again, take some dark skin tone, some warm red, warm yellow, a little bit of blue, and some white. Got a bit too much white in there. That would be our darkest. Maybe needs a bit. That would be darker. So I'm going to mix that, and then I'm just going to mix a slightly different one up here with more yellow in it. Okay, and both of those I'm going to put some glazing fluid. Okay. So it's going to take this. Just a tad bit of white in there. Okay. There, I feel much better about that forehead now. Because there was some, I think it might be just a line or something underneath there, I'm not sure what I've done. I mean, I guess I could keep glazing until I just feel really happy. But I'm going to move. Actually, that is quite nice, isn't it? I like that. Maybe I'll just see how it looks if I glaze with this. Some of these, yeah, I just needs to be darker. So taking that darker color. Get the glazing fluid on it. You can see I can spread it out a bit. And let's just get a bit of blue, more blue in there to darken it. Just kind of keep this going, kind of just fluff that beard out a bit, right? Even go into here just to slightly darken a little bit. Nice little, got nice texture. Here, cool. Okay. Dropping my rags. Okay. So, I think we're getting pretty close. I just want to now, I'm really going to focus mostly on doing some pearls and background stuff. Signature, should I do that? Should I do that signature? Yeah, I'm going to need to mix some darker paint up. Let's mix that again. Let's make purple here. Just make it dark purple. Okay. I see. Ace Paula says in the chat there, very close, certainly. This is a master art. Great job, Michael. Thank you very much for saying that. I appreciate that. If you wanted the signature to be a little bit bigger so that it's easier to paint, you could also just enlarge it on your computer or printer or photocopier. Like, I think all of these things, like doing the signature like this, yeah, it's tough, but it's really great muscles to be working here. Like all that little fine lines like this,
not easy to do, right? And probably some of the most difficult things you can do. But it feels really nice to do it. Okay. So, oh, let's paint some of this. A bunch of brushes to clean here. Okay. I'm going to try to finish up here in about 10-15 minutes. I think we're pretty close. Obviously there's, I mean, we could work on this one for a while. There's a lot of details. Okay. So, that bugs me a bit down there. Let's just take care of that right now. See, I gotta wait for that to dry before I just keep on fiddling with it. Although I wonder if I should do any more blue glazing, the cool blue. Some more glazing fluid on here. I'll put some white into this blue as I glaze with it. I'm gonna glaze into this bit to the side here.
Okay. Get a bit of just the warm yellow. Touch this up. It's going over top of these lines that I painted white a little while ago. I'm going to add a bit of red to that. It's gonna get, it's got some kind of blue or something gray on top of this. Dark purple. Using this to do the lines between the lips. Okay, let's blow dry this. We'll start doing the pearls and a little bit of detail up there, and we'll be done. Okay. Joshua gave me a good laugh there. The background looks like the Space Jam logo. That is so funny. I mean, it does have a little bit of that Looney Tunes quality. I totally see what you're saying. Those kind of rings inside of rings. You know that. Okay, home stretch here, folks. There's, I'm going to do this quickly. Should even use a small brush. To do these, the pearls, I want some white, and let's zoom in here. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to do all of these details, but let's just put some and even learning how to do little circles with your paintbrush is a great skill to have. And kind of I put my brush down and then just sort of make little circles as I kind of gently pull up a little bit so that I get the basic shape in. Now I know. I was like, what was this? I thought I had some weird line. I realized it's because it's this kind of pendant that's right here on the forehead. And here the whole time I was trying to get rid of it to paint it out. Should have known it had some purpose there. Keep in mind, all of these little white dots and things are going to slowly fade again, right? So you want to do a good job, but just keeping in mind that you may have to, depending on how much paint you have on your brush, you may end up having to do multiple layers of this, right? So I'm not going to do all of the details here. I just want to get a good feeling for it, and then we'll call it a day. So this other one kind of comes down here. So we want to make this go straight up vertically.
there's a little bit of gray here in a minute. Remember I said I'd come back to this? Here I am. Here I am, painting on some feathers. Da-da-da. So any place that there's white and I want to cover things up, I'm just going to do a little bit more, put another extra layer, cover up those pencil lines. Okay. So a lot of pearls here. We're not going to paint all of them, but we'll do our best. Okay, so let's start. I'm going to work my way around this way from the smallest one. So I really probably should have made these lines smaller for myself when I was painting it, or even painted right over top of them. But that could have made things difficult to see at this point. So we'll see how these dry, because potentially the fact that they do dry not quite as intense would be kind of good, because we could even use that for the darker side of the pearls and just put a bit more white on one side to suggest that's where the light is coming from, and that's the highlight of the pearl. Some of these are a little bit sloppy. It's just, you know, it's the end of the painting and getting close to home, and you know, they always say the majority of accidents happen close to home, and you just, when you're stop being in the moment and you're thinking about, okay, what am I gonna have for dinner, and you're not really paying attention, then oh no, what have I done? One thing I was considering doing here instead of just pure white was the first pass was doing gray pearls and then doing white over just one half. But
since I'm running out of time, I'm just going a little bit fast and maybe a bit sloppy here. Look at the detail in those pearls as he's painted them, right? Those are just gorgeous. I mean, each one has been given a lot of attention, and it pays off, right? And it goes to the overall look of the painting, where, you know, it might be, you might not even ever know, probably very few people spend any time looking at the pearls, even as long as we've had them up on the computer screen right now. But they overall help convince us of, you know, the quality, overall quality of the entire painting. So it's worth just sort of looking at it a little further away. Back this out. I do feel like, okay, to fix that, even though it's not technically correct, I'm gonna put some cool blue in between here. Just go around and clean anything up. going to do just a little bit of white glazing again. Just get some fresh glazing fluid on here. Does get whiter down there. I might just leave that though. Okay, I'm gonna blow dry it, and I will do it just a couple minutes of extra work. I'm gonna do a bit of gray in a few places before we're all done here. Let's blow dry it, and then we're almost done.
Okay. So to get the kind of that purple glaze, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take, at this point I can just use paint that's still on my palette, because we're not going to make, it's not going to be very dark. We just want a very subtle effect. So I'm just going to scoop some, you see all this paint, most of it's kind of quite well dried. I'm going to take it and just put it over here. Right, because I got a bunch of glazing fluid there. Put that in. Okay, so now this is all my white glazing fluid. I'm just going to add a bit of this purple to the glazing fluid. Very little. We could spend quite a long time on this, but, you know, as I said, I want to try to wrap up ASAP. So the light is kind of coming from this side, right? Hitting the pearl. So the darker part of the pearls is going to be on this side. So let's just put a little, almost like little, like crescent shapes, I guess, on one side. This is pretty subtle. Or it was, until... Now you could do many passes of this and get darker and darker, etc. I'm just going to do the most quick and dirty way possible. It just gives it just a tiny bit more volume. So they don't just like white flat shapes here. As I come into the darker side of the shadowy part of his body, we can get a little bit darker with more aggressive with the shading. Now obviously I've been working on this for what, 4 minutes or so, and so the results are going to reflect that. You know, we really wanted to make this super convincing. I might spend a whole day really working hard on this. I'm just going to take this same dark glaze and just put it over here to darken part of the collar.
Put a bit under. Some of these up here too, wasn't there? Really quickly. Getting those feathers, and let's get a little bit darker side on this here. Okay. Okay, I think that might be as far as I want to take. Okay, I think that's probably good enough. I could continue working on this for a while, but I need to give our daughter a bath here in a few minutes, so that's as much time as I have. let me see. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. And I didn't really even get a chance to talk much about all the things I've been learning about over the past about a month I've been planning this painting. Oops. So one of the things that I've been reading about is Sikh history, and it is Sikh History Month right now, which is one of the reasons why I've chosen this artist. And I gotta tell you, it's super fascinating, right? Learning about a culture that I knew nothing about, absolutely zero about, and immersing myself in it and looking at the art and researching the artists and understanding about who the people are that are in the paintings, including this guru, Gobind Singh, has been a really neat adventure for me just personally. That makes me so happy. That makes me really happy. What an adventure! Learning I have learned so much over the past while with this painting, and also all the other paintings we've been doing. Because I know who these are. I've seen these images. I've seen Sobha Singh's images for decades. I've seen them, as I said, not just in art galleries, but I've seen them reproduced in restaurant. Every time you go to an Indian restaurant, you'll see an image of at least one of the gurus there. Well, assuming that it's a Sikh restaurant, but here in Vancouver, there's a large Sikh population, so most of the Indian restaurants that I go to, I see these images around, and I think they're beautiful, gorgeous images. And so it's been really fun to kind of dig in and learn a little bit about, let's say, the whole history of gurus. Like, there's tons of videos and information, books about them. You don't have to be a believer to immerse yourself in a different religion or a different culture, right? Just spending a little bit of time like with me and painting along with me, and really kind of just makes me feel like more of like a global citizen, that I have more of an understanding of other people and their history. Like this figure is revered, just as a quick little side. I mean, there is some great stories. Like, okay, just one quick last story before I finish off about this guru, who was the final guru. He's sort of really well known for forming this kind of warrior group within the Sikh culture, because during this entire time, during the rise of Sikhism, which was late 1400s to the early 1700s when he died, and he was the kind of the end of the gurus, and then according to Sikhism, sort of the last guru is the text that exists, and the text is revered as a guru, right? But one of the interesting stories, it's a really famous story of him. He gathered thousands of Sikhs together under this, or in front of this tent on a stage, or there was a tent on a stage, and all of these Sikhs gathered. They were super excited to see the guru, right? He's, the guy, and he shows up, and he right at the beginning of his speech, he calls up. He says,
I'll just completely bastardize the language, but just sort of like, my sword hungers for blood. Whose blood will help wet my sword? And everybody in the crowd's like, what? You want to kill one of us? This guy's crazy, right? They're really excited to see their guru, and he's now threatening. He wants to kill one of them, right? And so everyone's like, silence goes over the crowd. Like, you can imagine this happening in any other kind of religion or religious ceremony, right? And finally, one guy puts up their hand, and he takes them into this little tent that's on the stage, and you hear this whoosh, thunk, and then he comes out of the tent with his sword dripping in blood, and everyone's, oh, what? And he says, my sword is still hungry. Who wants, who can help, wet my sword even more? And people are even more shocked. They're like, oh, he actually did it, right? And so, but eventually there's a few people who offer themselves up, and they go into the tent, and you hear whoosh, thunk, whoosh, thunk. And so 5 people volunteer to go into the tent, and the crowd is like, people are like yelling and screaming, people are crying, people are running, like, what on earth is going on? And so he emerges with his sword dripping, and then he opens the tent, and those 5 people that went into the tent are now in like the most beautiful robes, and he has now elevated those people who were from all walks of Sikh life to kind of the ultimate positions within the culture, within the religion, because these are people who were volunteering their lives for him and for in defense of Sikhism. And people are like, oh, I see what you did there. Very clever, right? Because those people were willing to die, and yet because of the fact they were willing to die, they became kind of elevated to this special status. And there's like 10 other great ones I could tell, but basically Sikhism, at the time it was being formed, there was this incredible pressure from basically the Muslims had kind of invaded most of India and were pressing further and further down. Basically had overrun most of the country and were trying to convert all of the Hindus and Sikhs to Islam. And so he was the last human who helped kind of raise the alarm and raise an army to fight and eventually defeat and fight for the religious freedom of Sikhs within India. So he is particularly revered for really saving the culture from the Muslim invaders who had taken over most of India at that time. So anyway, I feel a little bit awkward telling the stories of a whole other culture which I've just only gotten a very, very small bit of a taste of, but I wanted just to share a little bit of it, because as ignorant as I am over so much of it, it is absolutely fascinating. And the more I learn about kind of the history of, let's say, the people in the paintings, it makes the painting so much richer and so much more interesting. Anyway, I should give her daughter a bath. There's a few things I'm going to wait until Thursday to do. So we're going to do I'm still not exactly sure. We have some people want to do polar bears, potentially some other Arctic animals. I think we're going to do something Arctic related, because I got some really great stories that are perfect for Earth Day. So thank you very much, May. I just see you in the chat there. You had some great ideas. I really appreciate your suggestions in the Facebook group. So again, good idea to join the Facebook group. Join all the other great artists who are on there, who are super, super supportive. And yeah, do I have anything else to say? I could probably, I have lots of stuff to say, but you're like, just cut it off, Michael, and let's wrap it up for the night. So I will do that. Thank you, everyone, for joining me, for painting with me. If you would like to make a donation, small or large, there's a link to the PayPal down below. I very much appreciate all of your donations, and that's everything you see here. All of the lights, cameras, the fact that we're doing this at all is by virtue of all of your generosity. So I really, really do appreciate that. Okay, everybody. So enjoy the rest of your evening. We will see you in a couple of days. We'll talk about the beautiful Earth and some of the great animals I saw on my trip to the North Pole. The North Pole. I've been there. We'll talk all about it in a few days. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you again very, very soon. Good night.